Did it?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Emily May Miles. I'm from the Kent Autistic Trust.
My name's EJ, or Emma Jane Standeven, and I have a business called EJ-PT.
And we're here today to talk about menopause, autism, and caring.
Perfect. So this is a little bit about me and my experience. So as I said, my name's Emma Jane, or EJ, and I'm a 30-year-old mum with a sports psychology degree. I'm a personal trainer and I help women pre and postnatally and those going through menopause. And I've got around 12 years experience in the fitness industry. So many of my clients are in perimenopause or going through menopause, coming close to menopause, and experiencing lots of side effects. So that's kind of my experience with menopause itself. And I live with my 4-year-old son who is neurodiverse, currently undiagnosed though.
So I'm Emily May and I work for the Kent Autistic Trust. I'm 43 years old and probably in perimenopause already. I have worked in the disability and autism field for probably over 25 years, but I'm trying to make myself look a lot younger. I probably have undiagnosed ADHD. I fidget, I move, I don't sit still, some of the basic signs of it, but many more. I am a parent to 2 neurodiverse children, and I actually survived my mother's menopause rather than live through it, maybe.
Survived, I like that. We've all survived.
So what we're going to do is just go through some of the slides and talk about what menopause means. And then as we go through, we'll talk about what that means for autistic people and people that care, because it can have quite a big impact in your roles and it can have quite a big impact on your lives. So EJ, do you want to do this bit?
Absolutely, yeah. So what is menopause? You may have come across menopause before, but you might not be totally aware of what it is. So it is part of the natural aging process. And unfortunately, ladies, it is going to come to all of us. So we're trying really to raise the profile and get rid of it as a taboo topic. So menopause is the stage when the ovaries completely stop producing the reproductive hormones, and there's no monthly period for consecutive 12 months, so a full year without a monthly cycle. So coming into perimenopause, you'll find there is a peak and flow. You might go a few months without a period and then you'll have one. We're talking about 12 consistent or consecutive months without a menstrual cycle. And what happens is there's an increase in hormones. So we come into perimenopause and the hormones in our bodies kind of go into a frenzy. So some will increase, some will decrease. But the most important one for our bones is estrogen. So our estrogen levels begin to fluctuate and then they gradually decline. And this can lead to all sorts of side effects, predominantly mood swings, hot flushes that you might have heard of before, headaches, and in some cases, depression as well. The average age for menopause in the UK is 51 years of age. That's not to say that people can't start earlier. There are cases of women who have started really quite late into their 30s or early 30s, who have started those symptoms of perimenopause. So it isn't unheard of. And then at the opposite end of the scale, some women can start perimenopause as close to their 60s. But obviously we know that menopause is much more than this. So let's touch a little bit more on perimenopause. And this is basically that transitional period between or up to menopause, and it can start as many as 10 years before we actually go through full menopause. So we're getting these side effects for almost 10 years before the full menopause is hit. And on average, again, women in the UK can transition for between 4 and 8 years. So we're not just talking a few months, we're talking quite a long time in terms of that transition from perimenopause to menopause itself. And your class is being out of perimenopause when you've had that 12 consecutive months without a menstrual cycle. So up to that point, you're still kind of in that perimenopausal phase. During perimenopause, your fertility is declining because, like I touched on, we've got that drop in that peak and flow of the estrogen. But you can still become pregnant. So it's really important to make sure that you are still on some kind of contraceptive to avoid falling pregnant unexpectedly, because as much as those hormones are changing, you've still got both estrogen and progesterone very much present in the body.
And also you're more likely to have twins the older you are as well.
You are, yeah. So avoid that by making sure that you've still got a solid contraceptive in place. Obviously, there could be some interactions with your HRT. So it's really important for us to touch on at this point that we are not medical professionals. We just know a lot about the topic, and we're just here to kind of help and advise today. So anything in terms of interactions with your medications really needs to be signposted to your GP. But like I say, just making sure that you are fully protected until you've hit complete menopause. And with the menstrual cycle, it can become longer or shorter or more irregular. We really have no way of tracking what's going to be happening from 1 month to the next until you get into that routine of having no menstrual cycle at all. So it's really just bearing that in mind, being aware that that is likely to happen, and that's okay. It's not abnormal and nobody else is experiencing it. That is totally normal to go through. And obviously you're going to have irregular hormone production, which is where those fantastic mood swings come in. And like I say, your bleed could be a lot heavier, a lot lighter. It's going to fluctuate from month to month.
So some common symptoms of perimenopause. There are others. So kind of looking at this, and then you go, oh, I've got this though, but that's not on that list. There are more. One of the recent ones I found out is itchy ears, and I've had itchy ears for years. And I keep thinking I'm getting hay fever or a cold or something. And I read somewhere actually that's part of perimenopause is itchy ears because it affects your skin.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
Itchy ears. There we go.
Yeah. So some of the ones that kind of reach out for me is we all know about the hot flashes, but many people don't know about the cold flashes, do they? I mean, and that's one of the biggest things for myself is that I often get more cold flashes than I ever do get the hot flashes. And often we would link that to becoming unwell or something along that. But when it happens regularly, then obviously there's a problem with that.
Yes, I think sometimes we can maybe put it down to poor circulation or the fact that we are getting older, so we just assume that things start to fall apart. But yeah, the cold flashes in particular are really because those hormones again are in that frenzy, so it will affect people differently. Some people will go the complete opposite direction and be really hot, but actually some people will be really cold, and because the body doesn't quite understand what's happening with the hormones and how they're interacting, certain parts of the body can start to kind of close off or shut down because they don't know what to expect or how to react. So in particular, kind of the extremities, so fingers, toes, feet in particular, are places where the cold flashes can really hit, and actually people lose complete sensation in their hands and feet, which obviously the lady a few weeks ago touched on, where she's constantly carrying around a blanket or wearing socks even in the house on a warm day, because you never know when that is all of a sudden going to creep up on you.
Yeah. So one of the things, some of the other things that kind of get me on this, particularly for autistic people and carers, is things like mood swings. Now, autistic people often struggle with coping how they're feeling. And if their coping skills aren't working very well, then they can become very nervous and very anxious very quickly. And if you're having mood swings along with the perimenopause and not realizing you're hitting perimenopause, what often happens is that you will put this down to the anxiety via your autism, or the fact that things aren't going right in your life. And actually it might not be any of that at all. And particularly if you're a carer, you kind of need that consistency of emotion to be able to provide support for people around you. And if you know your mood swings all over the place, it's really hard to keep a level head when you are supporting other people. And I know because I'm going through it myself. Like my two children will come in 1 minute and I'm in a frenzy of screaming and shouting and can't cope with it, and then another moment I know that I'm absolutely fine and I can deal with that and it's okay, but there's something inside you that can't stop it and it just all comes out. And that's that. My poor husband does suffer.
Got to take the good with the bad, right?
Yeah. The other thing are things like poor concentration. Now, if you're neurodiverse, often concentration's a big thing that you might struggle with, particularly on the ADHD side. Is often it's poor concentration is one of the biggest things. And if you thought you had that under control, now all of a sudden you haven't, you know, it can become quite frightening and quite scary to know that the one thing you thought you had under control and you thought you had working for you and you had the right strategies around you to help you do that, all of a sudden come falling apart, and that could be quite depressive as well.
Yeah, one of the ones I want to touch on is the achy joints and muscles. Now, when we had a conversation a few weeks back, this was something that a lot of people, again, very similar to the cold flashes, it's really easy to kind of put it down for something else. So those achy joints and muscles can really feel like, oh, maybe I feel like I'm getting a cold, or I feel a bit fluey, like I've got fluey symptoms. But if they are continuous and they're not going away, again, it might be a real sign that you are in perimenopause, because again, the body's really just trying to figure out what on earth is going on with those hormones. Predominantly it's all hormone related, so it's just your body's way of reacting. And another one that we kind of forget about is either thinning and hair loss, or actually then your body's almost on steroids and you're producing more hair, particularly on the face, which can be really disconcerting for women in particular. I think women more so than men have a real kind of issue around body image, so then starting to get more facial hair or darker hair in more visible places can actually make you go even more inside yourself, and you kind of think, oh, I can't, if for someone who already perhaps struggles on a day-to-day basis just leaving the house and being around other people, or worrying in social situations, that's the first thing that you're going to think everyone will notice, because we see ourselves every day and we notice these changes in our bodies and our faces in particular. That is, your face is who you are. That's the first thing that everyone sees. So if you feel like you're getting a little bit more hair, particularly I'm touching this area because this is where it starts to come predominantly, and around the chin, it's very noticeable straight away. So again, that's something that we try and manage the expectation with that, because it can happen to quite a significant amount of women actually.
The other one is fatigue. I mean,
Yeah.
Autistic people and neurodiverse people actually work 3 times harder than neurotypical people to achieve often a very similar outcome. And that's because a lot of autistic people are masking, they are manually processing, they're doing an awful lot of extra work that maybe neurotypical people aren't doing.
Yeah.
The only thing I would also say about all of these is that they can be something else as well. So if you've got some of these, don't instantly go, oh, I must be perimenopausal. Always get it checked out. So for example, with fatigue, that could be lots of things like an iron deficiency, a vitamin D deficiency. You could have thyroid problem. There's a long list of things that cause fatigue. So it's always worthwhile to go to the GP and get that properly checked out before you come to that menopause kind of conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
So coming on to menopause symptoms, as you can see, there are significantly more. There's lots that we've already touched on, but we're going to go, I'm going to hit trouble sleeping, because I think that's a really important one. Again, where you've just touched on there, that people who are neurodiverse are kind of working 3 times as hard as everybody else, and that level of fatigue, if you're then on top of that having trouble sleeping, it's how do you manage that expectation, not only as the neurodiverse person themselves, but also as the carer, and just kind of making sure that you communicate with people. It's okay that you haven't had a very good sleep, and just not only communicating with others, but communicating to yourself that actually perhaps this is why I'm feeling the way I feel. I've just had a really bad night's sleep. It's not me overthinking things or unable to cope in a situation. I just genuinely haven't had a really good night's sleep. So we all know that sleep is super important at any stage of life, but particularly when you're going through the hot flashes, the mood swings, that little bit less sleep can actually kind of increase tenfold throughout the day, because like you said, sometimes you can really rationalize with the kids, other times you cannot focus, and a lot of that could be because you just haven't had enough sleep either.
Yeah, the one I want to look at, and a lot of people don't really like talking about, is obviously sex drive.
Yes.
I would say there's an inconsistency with sex drive. It's not always that it's low or no sex drive. Sometimes there's really high peaks in no sex drive as well. And that can make, if you are in a partnership, very, very difficult to kind of even that out, and it can be very confusing for both you and the person that you're with, because that's part of connection of that relationship. And sometimes if that's not regular, how you were originally having intercourse with somebody, then it becomes very confusing for both parties. And I think with also people don't realize how that impacts on how you feel about yourself as well. So if you've got a low sex drive and your partner is kind of hoping for something more within that, most partners are understanding, and that's fine, but you know, they have their own sex drives that need to be looked at too. And then you don't feel great about yourself, or if you've got a really high sex drive for that week or that month and your partner's really tired, and then you know, it can really have an impact on how you feel about the world and how you feel about things around you. And like menopause, it's not often talked about, and I think it's really important to keep communication open with your partners or your support network about what you're going through, because the more you talk about it, the more they'll understand where you're coming from. And I think that's really, really important, because then everybody is on the same page. I mean, your page is going to be fluctuating anyway. You know, you need somebody that's kind of more understanding around you to kind of go, okay, we're in that menopause moment, we're fine, we'll get over it, tomorrow will be another day. And rather than taking it as a personal attack. But yeah, I think the more you talk about it, the more enlightened people are, the easier it is to cope with all of these things on this list, because your support network understands that.
Yeah, I really like what you said there about a menopause moment as well. And it is noticing that they are just moments. It's not, you know, I touched on the fact that it can take 10 years to get through perimenopause to the other side of menopause, but it's not like your entire life is going to be overhauled. It's not every single minute of every single day. It is noticing that actually that is a menopause moment and it's going to pass. But I think, yeah, again, you know, sex drive is something that it's almost like we're too proud to talk about as women in particular. I think, you know, it's very easy for men to be seen as a Jack the Lad, or, you know, how many women have you slept with, or, you know, how much sex are you still having. And I think women try and mask that, we can be very private and kind of prudish about it. But actually, if you are in a relationship, it's so important to have those open conversations, you know, communicate with your partner. Actually, yeah, I can't bear the sight of you tonight, actually, so can you just leave me alone? Whereas other times you might just want nothing more than to, you know, jump into bed with each other. And it's and it's communicating that. And like you said, we can be so easily led with how we feel about ourselves and how we view ourselves in the world by that element of rejection of, actually, sorry love, I'm really tired. And we need to separate ourselves from, okay, he is genuinely tired, he's not rejecting me. It's just how we manage our expectation as well. And again, when you've got mood swings and the hormones going like this, it's no wonder that women feel the way they do through menopause. But being open about it is absolutely the best way to go. And if you can't talk to your partner, you know, find a friend who would understand you talking to them, and then eventually you can open up that conversation, because that will be really important for both you and your partner.
I think one of the important things to kind of touch on as well is that all women go through this, you know, so even if they're verbal or non-verbal, if they have a learning disability, if they don't have a learning disability. So if you are supporting somebody between that 30 to 50 odd year bracket, you know, the likelihood is they might be going through some of these things. And that needs to be taken into account when you are looking at care packages and you're looking at supporting them in a very really good way. I mean, one thing that pops out there is reoccurring UTIs. Now, often UTIs can be extremely painful. They can really affect you. If you haven't got the verbal capacity to explain that you think you might have a UTI, that can really impact on your behavior and your ability to engage in the environment around you in the same way. And that's something really easy to kind of look at and kind of make sure you can keep that a bit more under control. But if you don't know they might be going through perimenopause, you may not even look at UTIs if they've never suffered with them before.
Yeah, it's a really good one to touch on. And, you know, experiencing a UTI can make you really quite uncomfortable. So you are more agitated or angry, or you can snap a little bit quicker than you would usually. And I'm going to touch on allergies as well, because we're talking about the hormones being in this frenzy, and so many of our feelings and emotions and physical experiences can really heighten. So our allergies can get a lot worse, or you could develop an allergy that you've perhaps never had before, which all of a sudden comes to the forefront because your body's going, what on earth is happening to me? So again, that's something to bear in mind if you perhaps all of a sudden become allergic to a washing detergent you've always used, or all of a sudden, you know, berries in particular is one that in later life women in particular can get allergic to. So perhaps, you know, you can eat strawberries and then all of a sudden you start to get a little bit of a rash around your throat and you think, maybe not. So just being aware of that as well. And again, confirming that with your GP.
Yeah. There's also twitches is on there. Now, if you're starting a new medication, one of the side effects can be twitching too. Particularly around ADHD medication. There's some links between that and bringing on twitches and tics. So it could be that, you know, it could be perimenopause, it could be linked to medication if you're later on diagnosed and you're taking new medication. So it is worthwhile to kind of keep it in the back of your mind, but always look at the other reasons as well.
Yeah,
like we said earlier.
Perfect. Do we need to touch on any more? No,
I don't think. Do you want to?
No, that's good.
Oh. Okay, so what this means for autistic people in general is that with a shift of hormones, it actually impacts your coping skills. And we can't get away from that fact. You know, our hormones are a really big part of our bodies. It affects all of those things we just said. And, you know, if you've got really good coping skills and all of a sudden there's a shift in that, that will make it really, really difficult for you to continue to use those coping skills. So you might need to readapt and rechange some of them. There's going to be changes to your body. So if you're very body conscious, for example, you're going to find there's going to be real big changes, and that could have a real big impact to your mental health and your self-image, you know. And if, like when we went through puberty, that change is going to happen at the other end of the spectrum too. So there are things like the pubic hair will fall out, it will turn grey, you know, it will thin, you know, we'll get a bit thicker around the belly, you know, our boobies won't be just as perky as they were before. And sometimes that can feel out of control of our own systems, and that can have a real impact on that self-image and feeling out of control in an environment you already feel out of control of. Changes to sleep patterns. Often we know neurodiverse people have erratic sleep anyway. This can make it even worse. So just be mindful of that. You can do healthy sleep patterns. It may help, it may not. But in the reality of it is, try something and you may find that it works. It might work one day, but it doesn't work the other day. Don't give up on things like mindfulness. Don't give up on things like reducing tablet time, you know, having relaxing time before bed. All of those things will make you feel a lot calmer, if nothing else. Feeling like you're unable to control things, so the ability to control your environment, the ability to control you, the ability to control the people around you really declines in this moment as well. You will find an increase in anxiety, a real high increase in your anxiety because of all of those things as well, but also because naturally during the menopause and perimenopause, anxiety increases. Now, lots of people that transition in this time because they think their anxiety about work, for example, so there's a decline or change in work often around this time as well, which is really shocking considering it's 50% of the workforce that are all going to go through this and they're all going to have these issues and nothing's done about it. You know, it's a real big impact. You forget things like I just did there. I couldn't remember what I was going to say. Had a real brain fog. Brain fog is probably a really big thing, and for somebody that can recall information or struggles to manually process, that can be really difficult and it can delay your response. And then you feel like you're an absolute buffoon, but actually you're not. You're just going through perimenopause. And often I'll go, just ignore it. It's a menopause moment, and we move on. And I try not to let my anxiety build up around those moments. I just kind of take a breath and think, it's fine. It's normal. It's what happens. You know, like we said before, a change in sex drive. Now, I know quite a few people that will use sex to help decrease stress, for example. You know, they use it as part of their patterns in the day, about patterns of relationships and stuff like that. Now, if there's a change in your sex drive, or even things like your vagina's not as wet as it used to be because of the menopause. You know, you need to maybe think of other things that might help. So it may be, rather than including your partner, you may have to do that solo for a little while. You know, it may be that you need to lose lubricants, and you can get some really good lubricants now, you know, that are really helpful and actually are more designed for women's pleasure than men's pleasure, which I think is a really big thing to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Feeling depressed and low without knowing why. Now, I know depression's quite high in the neurodiverse community, but this is a different type of depression. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You know, you just feel a bit and a bit horrid, and that just adds to the depression that you might already have.
Yeah.
Lower energy than normal, which we touched upon earlier, and reduced concentration. Now, all of those things are really difficult, particularly if you are hyper focused and all of a sudden you realize you're not focusing the same ways that you were focusing before, and you can't get the motivation to do that. And if you've got, you know, problems with functionality skills, it becomes really difficult to really encompass that within that. See, I had a brain fog moment then, and I can't think of the word. It will come to me in a moment. There's only one bit of research that we actually found for autistic people, neurodiverse, and basically what they found is that the autistic people suffer with menopause and perimenopause more than neurotypical people. So that's nice to know.
Yeah.
What this means as a carer and somebody that cares for somebody. So if we take away from the fact that you're supporting somebody that might be perimenopause for a start, we're not worrying about that. We're worrying about you as the carer that's going through perimenopause or menopause. You know, you've got to think about that you're not reacting the same way around people that you were before. You might not be as happy and as go-lucky some days as you were before. You know, you might think of err on the side of negativity rather than positivity. And as a carer, that can be really hard to try and restructure your brain into thinking, oh, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep caring. I can't keep coping. Sometimes you'll miss things about the person that you're supporting that you wouldn't have missed before, because you have got that lack of concentration, you have got those brain fogs, you have got that fatigue, you have got hormones twisting around in your body that makes it really difficult. Not being able to find something to give you the self-care that you need. Recharging batteries is so important. You know, you cannot support somebody else if you are not recharged. And I know it's difficult. I pipe on about it all the time, but I'm one of the worst people to actually do my self-care myself. You know, I don't take time out and I don't do all of that, but it is really important. And when I do get a moment to do that, it's well worth my effort, and it is good and positive for the people that I'm supporting.
Yeah, that's it. You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
No. The other thing is the relationships around you are changing as well because of the way you react. And like we said before, the more you can talk about your support network, the better it will be for you, you know, because you might feel like it's falling apart. They don't recognize the changes might be perimenopausal, and that's a big deal. And that's your support network to do that. You might feel anxiety that you've never felt before. You know, and if you're encouraging somebody that's already anxious to come out of the house and you're anxious, it's really hard to do that. And it doesn't work, because then you become insular and then you can't do it. And sometimes you have to put this fake mask on and go, I'm fine, and then try and trundle along. But actually inside you're twisting and you can't cope with that.
Yeah.
Feeling forgetful, feeling like you're unable to cope, not able to sleep sufficiently to recharge your batteries. And if you're already caring for somebody that has a sleep deprivation issue, or somebody that doesn't sleep consistently, and then you're not sleeping when you can, that can have a real big knock-on effect. Hating the way that you look and being unable to maintain the body that you once had. Now, I've always been a disaster body-wise, but, you know, there's still moments where you kind of go, you know, what's that going on there? but if your body is really important to you and how you look, and that's your way to get your self-care, it's really hard to then keep going to the gym, even though it's really important for you, because you feel like it's not doing anything, but it is. All right. EJ will tap on that later, but it does. Okay. Having the hot and cold flushes. Now, when you're in the middle of the bathroom, giving somebody a bath, or you're in the middle of cooking dinner and you have a hot flash, you know, there's nothing worse than sitting there with a hot flash and a hot oven and a hot bath and whatever else, or even the other way around. You're out having a walk and all of a sudden you get a cold flash. Just make sure that you kind of aware that might happen. Low energy and fatigue, like I said, with the sleep as well, it just can be really hard work. Being unable to concentrate. Now, if you're trying to do multitask, which often lots of carers are, you know, it's really difficult to concentrate on one thing if lots of things, you know, you're a multitasker, and it's really difficult to do that. Feeling distant or unable to concentrate, like I said, it's multitasking moments. More impulsive in what you're doing, and that can be difficult if you're more impulsive and you need to be more level-headed. So, EJ,
I'm back. Sorry, I think I dropped out for a second there.
That's
I was
fine.
like, ah. So yeah, there's loads of different things that can help, and we're just going to touch on a few of them today. But predominantly, it is being clear, like Emma said, that this is just a phase in your life, a bit like puberty. So there is a start and an end point. We don't know exactly how long that's going to be, but just rest assured that it's going to happen to everybody. Make sure you've got a really good support network, and you will get through it, I promise you. A healthy diet that includes the essential vitamins and minerals that your body needs, and obviously your body's going to be changing all the time, so you'll see things like nutrients or multivitamins for women of a certain age. That is not by accident, that is totally on purpose, because as we change, our bodies need a slightly different mix of vitamins and minerals. So it's really important that you're either getting those in your diet, or you take some kind of supplement if you need to. I'm a personal trainer, so of course I'm going to talk about exercise, but genuinely exercise has been proven to alleviate a lot of the side effects, predominantly the mood swings, the depression, the anxiety, because we kind of have two parts of the brain, and if we get into a bit of an anxiety hit, or we are feeling really low, really depressed, two things happen. If we get our other side of the brain involved, we kind of physically tackle the problems that we're going through, as opposed to just trying to mentally deal with them. And secondly, when we exercise, some really good happy hormones called endorphins are produced. So they flood our body and make us feel a lot happier about the way we look, the way we feel, and just generally exercise is great. And I'm not talking, you know, thrashing yourself at the gym. I'm talking going for a walk, getting out in the fresh air, doing some yoga, going for a bike ride, or going for a swim, something that just means your body's moving. Another really important
I would also
thing,
suggest do something you enjoy doing.
Something
There's no
you
point
enjoy,
doing something that you really hate. They told me I had to exercise, because you're not going to do it for more than two times.
Please don't do that. Please don't drag yourself to the gym, as that's not going to make you feel happy. Finding something that you enjoy. And actually, if you don't want to necessarily do that on your own, find something that you can do with the kids. So taking them to the park, or having enjoyment through them as well. But ultimately, exercise of any kind, just moving the body, stretching, just being at one with your body for a bit of time will really benefit you. Limiting alcohol and caffeine intake, or tobacco, so any other toxins, again, really important, because those are poisons for the body. So if you can reduce those coming in, as well as kind of stabilizing the tremors in your hormones, then you absolutely will be in a much better position than if you are drinking quite heavily or drinking a lot of caffeine. And obviously there's alcohol-free and decaf options. If you do still need that fix of something, if you're going to a garden party, or if you're in the office and you still feel like you want to have a tea or coffee, just make sure that you're swapping out some of those, so that you're not getting quite a high intake of either caffeine or alcohol. We talked earlier on about having a blanket, so you can have a blanket or a fan or a cool pack handy at all times. So whether that's in your desk at work, or whether that's having something in the car, so you've always got something to fall back on if you need it. And talking about it, which is the whole point of us doing this and us trying to reach more and more women, is kicking the taboo about menopause and perimenopause, and actually knowing that knowledge is power. So sharing experiences, sharing the knowledge that we have around hormones and what's actually happening in the body. So managing people's expectation, and as a carer, if you've been through it already, or if you are going through perimenopause or almost through to menopause, you're in a really good position in the sense that you've kind of lived it already, so you can really understand and associate with your the people that you're caring for. But finding a really good connectivity, or finding a good network of women in particular that you can talk to and have those conversations around. Having good routines for bedtime. Were you going to say something then, Em?
I was just about to say that watching my mum go through the menopause was absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
It was for her as well. Don't get me wrong. I think she really suffered through it. But I think the biggest thing is I thought, oh my God, I've got to do this myself at some point. And that was really scary to think, because all I could see were the negative sides of that menopause thing. I mean, there was a long list of stuff that's really bad there. But, you know, it is part of life and there is an end to it. And, you know, and I think we all got through puberty in one form or another. But I do think we should be looking at teaching younger people than us as well, and kind of saying, this is what it looks like. It's nothing to be scary of, as long as you know about it, as long as you know what you need to do. And these are the things that help.
Yeah, that's it. And, you know, I'm only just 30, so I'm calling on lots of experience from other people, my clients in particular, who are already going through perimenopause, because I want to make sure that I know as much as possible, not only to help my clients, but also to help myself. And I know that when we've had conversations before, you know, you're really keen to talk to your daughter about it, because both of us had mums who went through menopause probably around the same time as we were, maybe 15, 16, and struggling with our own hormonal battles as well, hormonal and emotional battles. And actually it can be such a torrid time because you're just at each other all the time. You don't understand why. So actually raising that awareness with our children, the same as, you know, they learn maths and English and, you know, PSHE or whatever it is. I think menopause and perimenopause really needs to be talked about more, because the same as menstrual cycle and how we have children, this is all something that everyone's going to come across. So why are we not educating the next generation so that we can empower them through knowledge? Yeah, good bedtime routines. Sorry, that's where I was up to. Obviously, we've touched quite a bit on sleep and how important sleep is, irrespective of if you're going through menopause or not. So making sure that as much as possible you are keeping to those good sleep routines. So having a real decent sleep-wake cycle. I know some women in particular, the cycles can be really kind of erratic. So you'll find there'll be days where you wake up quite a lot in the night, and then you'll have 2 or 3 days where you have a really short burst of sleep, and then all of a sudden you'll have one really big sleep where your body's kind of trying to catch up. But as much as possible, make sure that you you know, you limit screen time before you go to bed. We all know about blue light filters and that kind of thing, so limit time on your phone or watching television or on any kind of device. Find something that works for you in terms of relaxing your body physically and mentally before you go to bed. So that might be a bit of yoga, that might be reading a book, that might be listening to some meditation, it might just be standing at the back door and gazing down your garden before you make your way up to bed. But then it's that process of brush the teeth, get into bed, and if you're not asleep within kind of 20 to 30 minutes of your head hitting the pillow, you need to get yourself up and you need to start the routine again, because otherwise what you'll do is build a negative association with your brain and your body around being in bed and not actually sleeping. So that is something new that I wanted to add this time. So yeah, I've just touched on there, trying mindfulness, meditation, yoga. Can you talk to us a bit more about scream therapy, because I'm really interested to know more. We literally just go in the garden or sit in the car and scream.
Yeah, essentially just scream. You know, there are moments where we hold it all in, and this is just a moment where you can actually just let it all out, and it actually brings up a big release in your body. You know, if you're just expelling all of that stress all out. I had a work colleague that used to weekly would put it in her diary, time to go and scream. So no matter where she was, she would literally go into an open space and scream, and then she'll come back in as though normal, everything was normal.
Everything's
but actually, and it has, you know, if you try just screaming at nothing, just screaming as large as you can, as getting as much out as you can, forcing all of that energy out, you find you come back and you go,
yeah. Cool. Okay, so scream therapy. Might have to try that myself. Um, again, we've touched on it, but I'll say it again, not being so hard on yourself, especially at this time when you need support, and not being afraid to put your hands up and go, actually, I'm having a real rubbish time here. I need some more help, or I need somebody to come on my round with me, or, I really just don't feel like peopling today. And that's okay as well. Getting yourself into those situations, knowing that you're not really up for them, is absolutely not what we want you to do. So seeking as much advice and support as possible, and kind of have one or two go-to people, maybe not your partner because they're there kind of 24/7, but finding somebody who you can always call on if you need that little bit of a pick me up, or they're going to send you a funny cat video that will cheer you up, or just something that you can kind of rely on, listening to music, something that gives you that pick me up, but also understanding that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling, because as we've touched on throughout the whole presentation, it is normal. There are things that are going to happen. It's just riding that wave sometimes. And then finally, talking to a consultant or your GP, like we spoke about earlier on, and looking at potentially HRT and testosterone, see if this is an option that you want to take.
The other thing I was going to
Yeah.
say, sorry, is that sometimes your GP isn't the best person to talk to. Sometimes there's a nurse that is there that specializes in menopause and gynecological issues for women. Some of the GPs do, and it might be worthwhile talking to your practice to see who the best person is to talk to initially, because there is lots of misconceptions out there about what menopause means and what treatments you can go for and what things you should be looking at. There is a real big kind of misconception that comes from a lot of the GPs about this. So it's worthwhile talking to someone that understands.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of women that I've spoken to have been prescribed antidepressants because the GP just assumes that that's what's going on with them, and it's totally the wrong approach. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Making sure that you know who is the go-to person, or even if you've got a nurse or a GP that you see on a regular basis, speaking to them, somebody you trust, and finding out who the best person at the practice is to have that conversation with. And if there isn't anybody at your practice, making sure that you get referred to somebody who can help.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's touch on a couple of those therapies I just spoke about. So hormone replacement therapy, better known as HRT. We've said speak to your GP, speak to your gynae specialist. But basically HRT is hormones. So most women can take a combination of the hormones, very similar to the contraceptive pill. So the hormones are both estrogen and progesterone, but some women can't actually take both the hormones, or some women who have had a hysterectomy only take the estrogen. So again, it's a conversation, it's person by person. We can't just say everyone needs to go on HRT, job done. It will be very specific to what other medications you're on and how they interact, and just making sure that you get the very best advice. And I think sometimes, and something we picked up on a group a couple of weeks ago, is going into your GP surgery or that consultation knowing what you want and not leaving until you've kind of had the outcome that you're after. Sometimes you might want to go in and explore your options, but ultimately if you know that you've researched enough, you've done your own research, you know that HRT is the thing for you, or you've spoken to other women, or you've been on a forum or what have you, as long as it isn't going to interact negatively with any medication that you're on already or give you worse side effects, absolutely just make sure you go in knowing what you want, and they can't really turn you down then. And yeah, so we've spoken about what kind of HRT is. It's a hormone replacement therapy, and there's loads of different ways of taking it. So if you're not really a tablet taker, you don't really like tablets, there are patches, there are gels, there are vaginal creams as well, and also pessaries. So loads of different ways in which you can take that therapy. Next one, natural or alternative therapy. So again, I'm not a specialist, but I just know that some of these are real good ones to touch on. If you haven't tried any of the natural or alternative therapies already, and you don't really want to go straight down the hormone replacement route, then let's have a look at some of these. So black cohosh is statistically proven to reduce hot flushes and may also lower your blood pressure. So as we get older, blood pressure, heart rate, all those kinds of things are steadily inclining as well. So it's really important that we're making sure that we're offsetting lots of different things when we're taking some kind of supplement. Soy, again, is great for relieving hot flashes and the night sweats in particular. So soy can be found in soybean or tofu, soy milk. So if you're struggling to kind of include it in your diet, just a simple swap out of the milk that you put in your tea or coffee. From personal experience, soy is probably the best alternative. Don't go put an almond or coconut milk in your tea. That's vile. So soy is a really good one that you can kind of incorporate into your diet. Vitamin E. So we talked about dryness and those hot flashes. You can actually get vitamin E in a topical form, so as a cream which you can rub on, which again, as Em touched on, can act as both a lubricant and also kind of detracts away from that uncomfortable dryness feeling that we get. And I know that some people have actually had this cream through their GP. Again, it differs from county to county, from, you know, road to different towns will be able to give you different things, but it's always worth asking.
The other thing I'm going to say is
yes,
that it's probably a taboo subject again. Let's get on with it. Vaginas need to be wet. You know, do not think that it being dry is where it's supposed to be. It will be uncomfortable. It will be itchy.
really
it will cause soreness. You know, it needs to be lubricated to keep it clean. You know, so it is really important, if you are suffering from this, to get it looked at, because, you know, there's a knock-on effect through that, and you're going to find that you will be completely thinking about that the whole time if you don't.
Absolutely. And that ties into the UTIs as well, because that is one of the common causes of UTIs. So making sure that you're kind of offsetting any chance of getting one of those too. Again, exercise, I'm not going to go on about it again, but it has been proven to reduce a lot of the symptoms. So again, we're not talking about thrashing yourself in the gym. We're talking about doing something that you enjoy. You might go and jump on the trampoline with your kids, or, you know, just do a couple of laps of the garden, or go for a swim, or just something that makes you feel fun. Do something a bit silly. Do something that's fun.
Dance around the kitchen.
Embrace your inner child. Put some old 90s music on and have a bit of a rave in the kitchen with your cup of tea. Stuff that makes you feel good. And then finally, a bit more around the diet. So drinking cold drinks, or making sure that you've got drinks in the fridge or ice in the freezer, having a handheld fan or a fan in your room at night, smaller meals, less spicy food as well, because naturally that spice in the stomach increases your core temperature, so naturally you're going to feel a lot warmer on the outside too. I've touched on reducing your alcohol intake, actually increasing hydration, so making sure that you are really nicely hydrated. That can be water, that can be squash, that could be a mixture of juices, whatever it is that means that you're going to keep yourself nicely hydrated. Colourful plates and plenty of vegetables. So if you're not keen on supplementation, making sure that you're getting real good colourful plates, tasting the rainbow, not in the sense of Skittles, but covering lots of different food groups in terms of your fruit and vegetables. Quitting smoking. Now, again, I think that's a little bit taboo. Some people are adamant that they'll never quit, and that's fine. But perhaps if you don't want to quit, just reducing the amount you smoke, because that will significantly help. And then keeping your body weight at a healthy level, and like we said earlier on, getting plenty of vitamin D too.
Now there's for vitamin D, neurodiverse people tend to have a lower vitamin D level than neurotypicals as well. So it is often worthwhile getting your vitamin D level to be checked, and you may need supplements that are prescribed by the GP for that, but it is common for all neurodiverse people to have a vitamin D defect. And a lot of people after lockdown all had a vitamin D defect as well. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, perfect.
So we talked about some coping skills. I think the biggest one is talking to your support networks, that's friends and family, you know, explaining that there's some moments that you aren't able to cope and you need to take 5, and someone needs to step in that bridge for you. Leaning on health professionals as much as possible. You know, the reality is that they're there to help and support you. It might not feel like it sometimes when you're talking to the receptionist and trying to get through the barrage of people that are there. But they are there for that, you know, and it's about asking them who's there that's best qualified for that. If there's nobody there, then ask for a referral, you know, to the most suitable place for you. And if you are never happy with that the GP or have medical professionals, please do put in a complaint. The more that people say this is unacceptable, the more it will become unacceptable and something will be done.
Yeah.
You can keep it in contact with myself and EJ. Never be afraid to ask for help or advice from us. You're more than welcome to do that. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Share your experience with loved ones and children that are younger than you, you know, both male and female. You know, let's get on with board here. Men need to know about this as much as women need to know about this. You know, we are in contact with men all of the time, and we can't turn around and say they never get it if we never tell them. If they don't listen to you, get them to watch a TV show, get them to read a book, get them to, you know, listen to this. You know, there's a whole range of things that you can do. Anything like my husband, he'll hear half of it, so fill in the other half at another time. So try and get a balance there, what works for you both.
Yeah.
It is a phase. There will be an end, albeit unknown to it's individual to each person. And remember your self-care. That goes for everyone. I think your support network, yourselves, if you're a carer, if you're an autistic person, if you're a parent, you know, it is really important to have those moments of self-care. You do need to recharge your batteries. We are in a full force society that we are trying to run 100 miles an hour. And we shouldn't be doing that. We need to take moments to just kind of go, you know. So here's some of the stuff that we kind of pulled together that might help with lots of things, and for you, more understanding for you or your loved ones or the people around you. There's some really good resources here. There are more and more stuff that's coming up on social media. There are more support groups around social media. Lots of employers are doing policies around menopause now. Lots of employers are also doing menopause groups that are for everybody to be able to join and learn a bit more. Use them as much as you can, as much you need, to get that support network and to get that knowledge. And a final thought, be yourself. People don't have to like you and you don't have to care. All right, you may feel like this at moments, and you know what? Shrug it off. If they don't like you, that's their issue, not your issue. People that care don't mind, and people that matter don't care. Yeah. No, people
Something
that
like
matter.
that.
Yeah. Something like that. Dr. Seuss, look it up. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
And now I need to stop recording.